Cheers.
Please start recording now. Cheers.
Okay. So, once again, we're revisiting Suige.
I like the whale.
Yeah.
I was just saying that, like...
Actually, I just want to pull this table a little bit more this way.
Okay.
And
Are we going to restart?
Yeah, well, no, we don't need to restart. Sorry, microphones. You probably heard it. ちょっとうるさくなったと思うんですけど、ごめんね。Cool. So, yes.
So, Sige is like... The way I kind of think of it is it's like the Honda Civic of sake. It's not the greatest sake ever. It's not even really that good, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
But it'll get you from point A to point B.
It gets you from point A to point B.
This is something that I really like about this. Is it's just my daily sake.
Yeah.
I drink this probably more than any other brand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, guys, 他におすすめの日本酒があったら
Please do.
Yeah, please let us know. で、有料チャットで送っていただければ確実に買います。
Here's what really happens when we don't get any recommendations is we'll meet on a day to film an episode, and then you'll be like, "Oh crap, Austin, we need to go get sake." And it's like, "Oh yeah," and then
we forgot to get it.
Sometimes we're good, and we go to an actual alcohol store that has a huge selection.
Not today.
Not today. Not today.
Yeah.
We went to we went to a supermarket, but we usually go to convenience or supermarkets and just kind of grab what's on the shelf.
Yeah. Please teach us the delicious sake, and we will get it.
Yes.
Yeah. Also, by the way, thanks for everybody joining the AA Friends.
Dude, I'm so excited about that. We've been talking about this for a while now, and it feels so good to finally kind of be releasing it, and we have so many plans for this community. I'm really hyped on it.
Yeah, after we're done with this episode, I want to make a couple of ideas, and then we'll put it in a survey or poll. Yeah. So that our members can tell us what they want to hear from us,
Yeah.
But yeah, so if you're a member, you can get this with英日字幕, so please watch with that. The script is also there too, so just check it out.
So I just heard about the scripts.
Oh, yeah, right.
That's so crazy to me. I didn't even think that was a thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny because when we released AA Friends, we were thinking about just doing the subtitles.
Yeah.
And then someone in the comments was like, 日本に字幕だけですかっていうことはスクリプトないですか? And I was like, oh, no. Wait, let me make the scripts.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. But yeah, so what's going to be our topic today? Our topic is
Yeah. So we're going to talk about something that I think is a really, really cool subject.
Mm-hmm.
And that subject is kind of talking about differences between Japanese people and Japanese American.
Right.
And to a greater extent, kind of talking about American identity.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Do you want to start us off?
Yes.
I think you talked about something that was really cool.
So I went to school at University of Washington.
Yeah.
And the reason I took the 6-hour plane ride from Boston all the way to Seattle to go to school there is because of the opportunities for learning Japanese. They had a really good Japanese program, lots of Japanese study abroad students. And when I got there, I started attending the JSA, the Japanese Student Association. And I was like, this is so cool. This is great. I can meet so many Japanese people. And there were lots of Japanese Americans there. One of the guys I remember, his name was Greg Ikeda.
Mm-hmm.
And he's super Japanese. He looks like a lot of Japanese people that I've met here. He's really short too, and but he's a rocker. He's straight out of Red Hot Chili Peppers, the singer. And there's nothing about him that is Japanese, just the name and the look. But he's from California. He has a Californian accent. He's like, yeah, dude, I play guitar too. He's like, yeah, dude, let's have a jam session.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting you brought up that story because growing up, I had quite a few Japanese American friends as well. A lot of Hapa friends. Half friends. And quite a few full Japanese, but they're American.
Yeah.
And I also read a really interesting book. I don't know if you've heard of this book. Have you heard of Farewell to Manzar?
Yeah. We read that in middle school.
Yeah. So for those of you who aren't aware of this book, so this book, it tells the story of a Japanese American girl who her father is from, well, both her parents are Japanese born Japanese people.
So she's Nisei.
Yeah, she's Nisei. But she was born in California and they eventually end up moving to Seattle.
Yeah.
It kind of goes over her life because she was a child during World War II, and so she experienced like the Japanese internment in the United States.
Yeah.
And you know, part of the story is like talking about her experience in the camp, but also part of the story is kind of like really kind of going over like what the identity of a Japanese American citizen is like.
Yeah.
And especially nowadays, like post World War II, there was a huge shift in how Japanese people in America acted.
Yeah.
And I think that's the reason why you tend to see Japanese Americans act so much differently than Japanese people.
Yeah. You know, it's funny because like, so I have Chinese American friends, you know, and the Chinese American friends are much more in tune with their Chinese heritage. Like their parents only speak Chinese. Like they've lived in America for 30 years and they don't speak English very well. But with the Japanese American friends that I have, it's like they're Japanese in name only. The rest of it is just full out American.
Yeah.
You know?
So, stories that I've been told from my friends, and then also coming from this book, there were frequent loyalty tests that Japanese people were given during World War II in America, where it's like, hey, you know, Americans really like doing this thing. Do you like doing this?
Yeah.
And so a lot of families were kind of like forced into adopting like these like really traditional American customs, like, you know, having their kids, you know, be sports players. Like, you know, maybe their son joins a football team, their daughter becomes a cheerleader. You know, they start making like American sweets and stuff like apple pie and like just start participating in that.
Yeah.
And I think now we're like, you know, we're 3 or 4 generations after that. And I think it's had like a really lasting effect on a lot of these families. Cause it's like, it's really interesting, especially if you're on the West Coast in the US. Yeah. Because obviously the West Coast has far more Asian people than the East Coast does. Right. And so if you go to like places like Seattle or California, I don't know so much Oregon. Like I didn't really see Asian communities in Oregon.
Oregon's really white.
It is very white.
Like Portland is the whitest city in America, I heard.
Is it really?
Yeah.
You know, I believe that.
Yeah.
Like I really believe that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so you go to like California and you'll go to Washington and it's really interesting because you'll see these communities over there that are like Asian communities, right? So you get Chinese communities and I would say Chinese communities is probably the most like, I'm gonna try a word on here. I'm gonna say monolithic.
Monolithic.
I want to say that word feels fitting because like you'll notice this a lot in college. Chinese students in college, and I'm talking about like exchange students, will come and mostly stick to themselves. Yeah. Like they'll all be part of like the Chinese student group in college. Yeah. Korean and Japanese and a lot of the Southeast Asian countries don't act that way.
So I would say so. I want to talk a little bit about like World War II stuff too, but I would say so. Koreans maybe so. Yeah. But I feel like, you know, Southeast Asians, like Vietnamese people, they kind of have their Vietnamese culture, their Vietnamese communities. Like so I noticed like the Chinese, even Chinese Americans, they have a lot of Chinese American friends. Yeah. Vietnamese, a lot of Vietnamese friends. Yeah. Japanese people, Japanese Americans really just hang out with white people, or like they don't necessarily hang out with Japanese people so much.
It definitely feels that way. Cause I mean, looking, I'm just using my own experience in Seattle. Like, you can tell like kind of how the communities are like interacting with like the greater American society just based off of like where they're positioned in Seattle. So if you break Seattle like top down on a map, right? generally speaking, the further north you go, the more rich people you're going to encounter. And the further south you go, the more poor people you're going to encounter. Generally speaking, of course, there's like little pockets of the opposite, right? This line right here, let's just say, is downtown.
Yeah.
Right? So north of downtown, you get Korean, Japanese, and white people. Further south, you get Chinese and Southeast Asian and Filipino. So it's like that kind of right there, like.
Although in Bellevue, you have a ton of Chinese people too, in the richer areas.
Kinda, yeah.
I mean, that's so yeah. I mean, a lot of the Chinese people that I met lived in Bellevue, actually. But so the question then is like, why is it like this? And it goes back to like what you said, World War II. I don't feel like we talked in detail about what happened at that time. So like, everyone knows about the attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. And that was a big shell shock, a big surprising moment. Yeah. And it was kind of like the 9/11 terrorist attacks on World Trade Center, I would say. Like
with how the U.S. reacted
that's what
to
I mean.
it.
Yeah.
I would definitely agree, because there was I don't know if anyone was in the U.S. Watching this at the time the 9/11 happened. I was 11 years old.
Yeah. I was 8.
But there was massive anti-Muslim feeling in the country, especially the first couple months. I mean, there were country songs, like not even just country songs, there were full on just regular pop songs talking about like, everybody getting together in the US and like fighting off invaders.
Yeah,
and,
right.
It's like you would see cartoons online, like, obviously Muslim people being killed in various ways, and it's like that whole sentiment is like us against them. And it was exactly the same way when World War II kicked off between America and Japan.
But they went even a step further, because the president sent out a declaration to especially Japanese Americans anyone of Japanese descent living on the West Coast. They had to be relocated to centers in like Middle America, which we call them concentration camps, but they're different from the Jewish German concentration camps.
We didn't specifically put them to death.
We just kind of held them there and be like, hey, while the war is happening, we don't trust you because you look like them, so just stay over here, right? And what ended up happening though is that it was a very sudden and very forceful move, and a lot of Japanese Americans had to leave their homes, leave their businesses, and just kind of leave it. Like, okay, so in the International District or Chinatown in Seattle, Main Street, it has some Japanese restaurants in it because that's where all the Japanese people lived.
Yeah, it's actually crazy because it was called Chinatown, but the vast majority of the people living there were Japanese people.
Because it became Chinatown after they were forcily removed, and then Chinese people came in. And when I went to Seattle in 2018 with my wife, and we saw that, actually there's still people talking about that history of being forcibly, even though they're American citizens, being forcibly removed.
Oh, sure.
And losing all that they have. When they came back, it's like no Japs in America is like graffitied on their walls and stuff. Oh,
completely. And most of them did not get the things that were taken away back.
Yeah, right.
If they had businesses or houses, those were confiscated and just sold to other people.
Yeah, and so people did not want to advertise their Japaneseness, so they changed American names, English names. They tried to blend in a lot, and maybe that's why you have that difference now.
And that's why you'll often see like especially the name changing with like Japanese American families. You'll see like Ken Suzuki.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like they'll adopt like English American names just to kind of distance themselves.
Yeah. And I feel like, that happened a lot in the United States with other ethnic groups too. Like when we talk about, my family's Greek and Italian. We kind of talked about how, like, some Japanese Americans will feel ties to their Japanese ancestry, but most of them don't.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the same thing, I think, for you and me. Like, because you said you're Irish.
Yeah. The majority of my family can trace their roots back to Irish. I mean, if you can't tell. And that identity kind of got forced on me a little bit.
Oh, really?
it was kind of weird because it didn't really come up when I was a kid, because I had like bleach blonde hair and blue eyes when I was a kid, up until probably like 16 or 17. And then my hair kind of turned brownish, and now we got ginger hair.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And it was kind of a weird thing, and it's like it didn't really come up until I was kind of starting to become an adult, and like once my hair turned red, I mean, I'm not going to try and compare it to like how Japanese people are treated, obviously, because it's nothing even remotely close to that, but I have been treated differently because I'm a ginger.
Gingers have souls. Some just look up gingers.
I mean, there's
have
a lot
souls.
of like funny jokes that are like really harmless, but you know, you definitely get treated differently. Like another thing is, although my family doesn't like outwardly like identify as Irish, right? In the sense that, you know, like you often say, like, we are Greek, we do this Greek thing, right? My family doesn't really do that, but a lot of the like the customs and traditions that you see in Ireland got passed down from my family through the generations. So like a perfect example of that is a lot of my family grew up Catholic, right? I think people have kind of like drifted off into their own thing now, just for various reasons, but you know, growing up I was Catholic. Both my parents growing up were Catholic, like, but pretty much my whole family grew up as Catholic. A lot of the food that we eat, like steak and potatoes, like pork chops, like that's what I grew up on. You know? So it's like those elements, I think you really nailed it. I think when we were talking earlier about this, where this was kind of like a passive, what was it? Passive culture?
Yeah. It's a little bit passive. Because like, so in the United States, pretty much everyone is like a hyphen American. Like, like maybe you don't really identify yourself so much, but you could say I'm Irish American, I'm Greek American, and Japanese American. And to be honest, like at this stage, the fact that you're Irish and the fact that my family's from Greece doesn't really affect us in our everyday life.
Not at all.
And
I've never been to Ireland.
Right. I've been to Greece once, and you know, it's a totally different culture, totally different language. I feel like you and we have more in common than like we have with like our like the home countries that are
not even
cities,
close.
you know,
not even close.
But that kind of like identity in America is something that I don't really see in Japan very much.
No, I would actually go out on a limb and say I don't think you would encounter that anywhere else in the world. Except maybe like Canada, because Canada is kind of similar to the US.
Well, to be fair, in Europe, there's a lot of immigration happening, and so you see that. You don't necessarily. Sometimes you'll say, "Oh, I'm English and German." Sometimes you'll have that. But it's not to the extent that it is in the United States.
Yeah, because I feel like there's so much like emphasis put on the fact that everyone is unless you're Native American, but like everyone else is an immigrant in America, if you just go back far enough. And so there's these, I don't know why, but there's these obsessions that Americans have with like clinging to that. It's like, no, I don't want to be fully American. I want to be hyphen American. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So it's funny because when I in the Boston area, most of the white people are Irish, Italian, Greek, or some sort of like, it's like Irish plus maybe Southern. Oh, there's also a lot of like Eastern Europeans, like Slavic peoples, right? When I came to Seattle, it felt really weird because there were so many like German or Scandinavian people. Like I went to
tons of Scandinavians. I went
to what's the not Bothell, not Bellevue, the other place with a B that's on
Bellingham?
No, not Bellingham. Maybe it isn't with a B, but it's
Bremerton?
No. It's on the 44 bus going like when you go through
Belltown?
University District, Wallingford, and you go further, it has like near Golden Gardens. And maybe it doesn't start with a B, maybe it starts with something else.
I don't know, man.
This is gonna bother me a lot because like it's like, did you ever go to what's that fish place called not Chesapeake Bay? That's different. Man, I haven't been to Seattle.
Dude, you've lost me, man. I have no idea.
Never mind. But anyways, so there's an area kind of like west of the University District, west of Wallingford.
Okay.
And there's tons of Scandinavian people there. They actually have like Norwegian Heritage Day there, where all like the Norwegian Americans will come out and hang out. And it's funny because it's like, maybe you have a little bit of that culture.
Yeah.
And you'll say, oh, I'm a Norwegian American, but there's nothing really about you that's Norwegian. It's just the fact that you say you're Norwegian and your appearance a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really crazy. Like I never even really thought about it growing up as a kid. Like, but the vast majority of like my white friends, all are Nordic descent.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. Like I wouldn't say I was they were like the whitest people in the group.
Yeah.
But because it's just weird. Like Seattle's got like such a multicultural area that's like, I often grew up like I maybe had one or two white friends and everyone else was something else. But I don't know. Like, I don't even know how to describe Nordic people.
Ballard. Sorry, it was Ballard.
Oh, dude, okay.
Sorry, man. It just came to me. I had to grab it before I remembered it.
No.
It's Ballard.
I get what you mean.
Okay.
But yeah, like Nordic people are just so weird compared to other white people.
What makes you say that?
It's like that wasn't a good way to say it actually. Yeah. But what I mean is like when it comes to like Central European white people. There's kind of like a shared like culture. It's like if you take a person who's like Irish descent or a person who's like family's British or German or French, they're all kind of the same.
Okay.
In the fact that like, you know, we all have like similar like customs and traditions. And then you get like Norwegian and Swedish, which they're just doing their own thing.
Yeah, right. It's like
completely their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, but it's funny though, because it's like when you interact with them, we're all just Americans at the end of the day, but it's that one day when you have that cultural festival. Did you ever have like, okay, so on St. Patrick's Day, do you emphasize the Irishness of your family more?
Not with my family, no.
Okay.
But yeah, me personally, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because like, so with me too, you know, I don't speak Greek. I've been in Greece once.
Yeah.
And there's nothing about me that's really Greek other than my name.
Yeah.
But on every year they would have like the Greek cultural festival at the local Greek Orthodox church near where I lived. And it was like, that day was the day I was Greek, even though I don't speak Greek.
Oh yeah.
And it's funny because it's like, if you ask me, oh, like what's in your heritage, I can say it right away.
Yeah.
But like, if you talk to a Japanese person, what's in your heritage? It's like, oh, I'm Japanese. You know, like that's nuts to me. That's like, where's your family from originally? Oh, we're Japanese.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, kind of. I think it might depend on where you go. Cause like Yui's family, like when I first went down there, like to meet Yui's family, they have like the family history that like goes back hundreds of years.
Really?
It's crazy. Like her mom brought out this scroll.
Oh, really?
And like literally had to lay it down on the floor.
Yeah. And
like just laid it all out on a display. It was like, yep, here's where we go all the way down this list. And it was really, really cool.
Wow.
But I feel like generally speaking though, I feel like if you were to ask, actually, you know what? I can actually talk through experience about this because I've asked my students about this, right? You ask high school students about this, like, what does it mean to be Japanese, right? If you ask them this question, 9 times out of 10, my students will respond, oh, well, we have this holiday.
Okay.
And everything gets centered around like holidays.
Really?
But it's like, no. Okay. Don't talk about holidays. What does it mean to be Japanese? That is a really hard question to answer. And it's like, I feel like, honestly, if someone came up to me and said, what is it to be American? I would struggle with that. And I think that's why a lot of Americans kind of cling to these like other identities is because you can't, it's really hard to like define what it is for your country to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you could also say to be Japanese is to be like the people who have lived here on this spot of the earth for generations and stuff. But like in the United States, you don't have that. You have people coming from Europe and stuff like that. You know? But yeah, it's like, it's something that people don't really think about very much here. Yeah. Some people, so what you said before about like your wife's like family is like, they really care about their family tree and stuff, which is great. But if you said, what's your ethnicity? It's like, oh, I'm Japanese. Yeah. I'm Japanese. Whereas like, we know for a fact that in Japan, there's lots of Korean and Chinese influence and other people.
Oh, tons.
Like one of my best friends, his great grandfather was Russian. And
Interesting.
You can kind of see that in him a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And it's like all these mixes kind of happen that people aren't really aware of. They're just Japanese.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll tell you, it would be really interesting.
Yeah.
To, because obviously there were Europeans and, people from other parts in the world coming over and living in Japan throughout the ages, right? So it's like, you kind of wonder, like, a lot of these European people had to come over here and establish families.
Yeah.
Like, if you move to another country, that's just kind of what you do.
Yeah.
Is you get married to a local and you kind of like integrate yourself into like the local community, right?
Yeah.
So there has to be like a lot of like half white, half black, half, whatever people that have grown up and like, eventually like, they grew up and they married other Japanese people. And like over time, it's like maybe 5-10 generations later, there's gotta be those people still around, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. Oh wait, what was
I wonder if that gets talked about. Like
it probably, if it's like more than 2 generations back, it probably doesn't get talked about. Just because you want everyone to conform to this idea of being Japanese.
Sure.
Yeah, because like in the States, my grandfather was very much Greek. He spoke Greek. He hung out with Greek people. He lived in a very Greek area, but he was also very American in his identity.
Yeah.
But it's like you have those kind of two dual identities, but in Japan, it's just this one.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say something based on what you said. I totally forgot. Let's just keep on going.
All right. Well, there is something I want to talk about too.
Ballard. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
Stop. There's something I want to talk about too. And what that is the difference between mixed race people that were born in America and mixed race people that are born here.
Okay, yeah, sure, go for it. So
when I talk to people who are like half Japanese, for example, that are from the US, a lot of the time when I talk to them, they feel like they belong to two groups, right? It's like, I don't want to say I'm fully American, but I know I'm not fully Japanese, but I kind of like a little bit of both, right? And something that really, really surprised me here is, so my school has recently switched to an international school.
Yeah.
And we get a big influx of mixed race students, maybe, whatever. They're either their mom or their dad is from a different country and often a different race, right? And almost all of these kids really try hard to appear Japanese.
Yeah.
And their thinking is often very different because there's a huge difference between a person who grew up knowing English and how they think and a person who grows up Japanese and how they think. Just the way we approach things is very different. But socially, they try really hard to be Japanese. And I find that really interesting that like you'll every once in a while you get like one kid who tries to like toe the line and tries to like be their own thing but also be Japanese, but like the vast majority of them are acting Japanese until they're in a situation where English is appropriate to use, and then they'll just flip the switch, and you know what I mean, then they'll start speaking fluent English and stuff. But as soon as they're back in the situation where they're with their Japanese friends, they're Japanese. And I find that really interesting because you do not see that in the US.
Yeah, it's always like, I am who I am. I'm always a mix of things, Yeah, it's funny because, my sister, when she came over to Japan for the first time, when we were walking down, going to my house. We passed by like a shopping area. And the first thing she said was, Arthur, I know we're in Japan and this is going to sound really stupid, but there are so many Japanese people here. And then,
that is a really stupid thing.
I know, no, because she's used to New York.
Sure.
Where there's all different types of people, you know?
Yeah.
But then as she spent some days here, she's like, Arthur, so are you telling me like all these people are pure Japanese? Because some of them totally look like they have European in them or some other sort of thing in them.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, either they're not aware of it or they're just like,
I get where your sister's coming from.
Yeah.
Because I kind of had a culture shock moment when I first came here too. Cause it's just like, especially being a white guy, like you're the majority everywhere, you know, like not everywhere in the world, obviously you could go to places, but like everywhere I've been.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's like people look like me.
Yeah.
And then I come here and it's like, okay, every once in a while I'll see some tall guy in the train station. Yeah. It's like, another white person. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's the black guy that lives in my community.
Yeah.
All
right. The one guy.
There's one dude. And then everybody else is Japanese.
Yeah. And
so, yeah, it's kind of, you kind of in some ways have like a little bit of a panic attack because your mind's just trying to like grasp to something that it's like used to.
Yeah.
And what I noticed like in the first month that I was here is you become really hyper focused in public because like, you know, if I'm walking around in Seattle, like I'm used to seeing white people. Yeah. So it's like I can kind of like tune them out.
Yeah.
Like I don't even notice them.
Yeah.
But here it's like everybody is Japanese, so it's like I'm looking at everybody's face.
Okay.
And now I'm used to it. Like I've been here for a while, and it's actually the opposite. Like when I go back to the United States,
now it's weird.
Like
There's
now
so
I
many
see
white
people. I'm like, oh God,
it's too bright.
Stop being everywhere.
It's too bright.
You know. Yeah. But yeah, no, I get that, but it's also kind of ridiculous if you think.
But here's the interesting thing though, because like I told you, my sister, she grew up in New York. She also spent a lot of time in South Africa, and she lived in Turkey for a while too. But I think for her, the biggest thing was just so many people just look the same. Like it looks like there's no diversity. And then later on, she's like, Arthur, come on. There's all this diversity. Look at all of these people's faces. They say they're all Japanese, but they look so different. There's got to be some diversity there. I'm like, to them, it's just 100% Japanese. And probably like you said, you know, there is some diversity there, but they're like, hey, I'm Japanese.
I mean, you can tell, right? Because there's commonly associated like facial features in different parts of Asia, and you obviously see that among a ton of people here, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's such a drive to have everyone part of the group.
Yeah.
That it's like you're either one of us or you're out.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Whereas in the States, it's like you can have that difference, but as long as you agree to like the set of ideals that's like America, then it's going to work well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, especially like, you know, it's like we're both fathers of mixed race children now too, and that's something that they're going to have to struggle with, you know, growing up. That's a choice that they're going to have to make. Well,
you know, I grew up being the foreigner, you know, when up until the time I was 7, you know, I lived in Germany. So I'm prepared to have those talks with my son where he's Japanese, but he's not.
Yeah.
And people see him as different, you know.
That's why I just moved to Shonan, bro.
Yeah.
Everyone just acts like Americans down there, so I fit right in.
Awesome, man. I think we've talked about this topic enough. What are we going to talk about next time? We're going to talk about the difference.
I'm drawing a blank.
Okay, it's fine. So we're going to talk about the differences in ways of thinking between Japanese and Americans in general. I'm not going to say it's exactly like that, but
sure, 100%.
But we'll save that for next time.
Okay.